This word I have for you today is about the European Union, Germany and France, who are under increasing pressure. Jesus is taking note of what's happening in the EU. Again, this is part of the declining Western power over global affairs that's taking shape, and a separation between the population and the state, the architecture, the politics of the state, the control, decision-making processes that are going on in the government sector, to which the populations no longer are in agreement. And so this increasing degrees of disorder, chaos, rejection, illegitimate government, and a discord between the population and the government is what we're seeing here now in the EU, particularly in this word in Germany and France. It's also happening in other places as well. We've seen with the escalation of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, the Polish putting up a border, looking like a military border for the next World War along their eastern edge to defend themselves against the increasing risk. Vladimir Putin has basically said publicly that he now regards that he is at war with NATO, and there has been steady progress in the deployment and introduction of new weapons, hardware, military hardware from various NATO nations, France and the UK and America, into the Ukraine conflict. Where that stands at the moment, Russia is now claiming victory over Bakhmut, which is the middle part of Ukraine, and now have taken that eastern section pretty much as they had intended, to control the majority of the nation's natural resources and almost all of their port facilities. So the next conflict in Ukraine will centre around the Crimean area, which Ukraine have said that they are happy to take from the Russians, which will cause an enormous conflict. This is a strategic position that blocks access to the port facilities along the Ukrainian coast and is now held by the Russians. So if that becomes another point of conflict after this last loss, that will definitely escalate the war even further, which is what the Europeans really are anticipating coming next. So this word relates to the situation in Germany and in France and the EU, which most of those nations are member states of NATO. So this is also about the conflict between NATO and Russia. So this is what the Spirit of God says to me. Angela Merkel was right. Angela Merkel was right about one thing. Times and seasons favour no man, least of all the poor. Her politics have created havoc in Germany, and every class from the least to the greatest is suffering losses. Their way of life has been irreparably changed, and there is no way to go back and repair what has been lost. The country is in disarray, and people can't get to form any kind of political resistance because their thoughts have become so trivial and divided on many issues. It has become a governance nightmare. To regather the problem will take something of a miracle to reignite democratic order and save the economy. Anarchy is possible, a result, of course, self-government and political chaos, and of course that would spell disaster economically on every front. It's Armageddon or bust for the EU. France is about to implode with civil discontent so extreme, the likes of which have not been seen since World War II. You've become aware of these issues just in time to speak to the hearts of those people you meet, the ones I give to you. Speak peace over them. My peace I leave you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives peace. Do not be troubled and do not fear. In my Father's house there are many rooms. If it were not so, I wouldn't have told you. I have prepared a place for you. So in this season of chaos that's starting to roll from one problem to the next, deepening crisis, economic, energy crisis, political crisis, war escalating, and the decline of civil order on top of all of these things, from the world's power centres, the most wealthy countries in the globe who've previously enjoyed many, many years of prosperity and increasing peace. We're now entering a new season where those things that we've enjoyed, the comforts that we've rested in, are going to be completely deconstructed and shaken. And these nations, unfortunately, in order to regather national unity and purpose and order, there's a few ways that things can go, and of course that is martial law and also war. By aggravating or stimulating the war narrative, it brings a nation into focus against an enemy. And I think certainly that's what's happening with regard to Russia. They're using this, and China, also talking about Taiwan. China's leadership are doing the same thing to galvanise unity within the national population and stimulate a focal point where there's an enemy, a clear enemy that the nation can offlay all of their sins on. So this is what the West, EU, are doing with regard to Russia, is accusing Vladimir Putin of pretty much every crime that they are committing themselves, and in doing so hoping that they will potentially generate a war economy that is going to cause these countries to prosper and also draw people into unity to support, you know, the next big crisis, which is Europe at war with Russia and China also, and the American narrative is very similar to this as well. So this is what we're facing. EU is Armageddon or bust. It's as if they're on a path that they cannot divert from. So they've chosen the road that they're going to tread. And in Scripture we can go back and see that in Revelation, this is because of the spirit, the demonic spirits that have been released from the false prophet and the dragon and the whore of Babylon, who speak lies, and those demon spirits go out to bring the leaders, the 10 kings of the earth, all the kings of the earth, in fact, into battle, into the last battle. And so it's as if these people are being goaded, drawn against their will perhaps, but certainly against rational, logical, human thought, into an end game, which is actually a judgment of God against them. So this is the season to choose who you serve, which kingdom you serve, and to stand and wait in the peace of God, to walk in that peace that Jesus is talking about here. He's prepared a place for you. He is the Prince of Peace, and his presence in his kingdom, when you align yourself with his nature and his salvation, is peace. It's a completely different destiny. It's also a completely different reality to the circumstances that are unfolding around us. And you're marked, you become marked in the spirit for a different outcome. Despite the crumbling, failing chaos that's being unleashed, the highest, most extreme levels of demonic, satanic trinity the world has ever seen, you are saved, spared, and set apart. And Scripture reminds us that it's the people who grieve over the events of the day, the kingdom of darkness that is taking control of the hearts and minds of men, the ones who grieve. You know, the Sermon on the Mount that Jesus spoke was all about those who mourn, the poor in spirit, he said. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit, for they will be comforted. He was talking about these days. He was talking about the trials and the sadness. Men's hearts will fail them in these days. And he was assuring those people that they would be the ones who saw the victory. They would be the ones who would be blessed and set apart for the salvation, and they would see God. Blessed are those who are pure in heart, for they will see God. Yeah, go back to that Sermon on the Mount and read the Beatitudes that Jesus spoke out, that tell us of a God who has made a distinction between those who are marked for destruction and those who are marked for salvation and life by the blood of the Lamb, the perfect sacrifice, and have received salvation from him in the spirit realm. There is a difference. There is a difference now as we walk in the present tense, and there is a difference in eternity, in the long run, because the kingdom of light will prevail.